This is the Spurs press, and it is what dictated who won and lost this London derby, and it was evident from the first whistle that both managers would be sticking to their guns. The 4-3 win for Chelsea perfectly encapsulated that football is a game of risk and reward. So let's take a look at the tactical gambles that both managers played. Caicedo started at right back, and truth be told, he only took up the position in defensive phases, because as soon as Chelsea were on the ball, they wanted him in that zone as little as humanly possible. He would, at every opportunity, drift into his natural pivot position alongside Romeo Lavia as they shifted in what could be a back four, because Robert Sanchez was extremely aggressive in pushing into the back line at times. But when the Chelsea shape was set, it essentially looked like this, a 3-2-2-3 that Maresca loves so much. But in this shape, Ange Postecoglou spotted an opportunity. He wanted Spurs pressing extremely high right from the off, led by Solanke looking to close down the central Cornwall whenever he got a touch. And this was the instant trigger for Johnson and Heung-min Son to descend on their men as well. If Sanchez was getting involved, this made things tricky for the goalkeeper, because we had seen him attempt longer passes on a fair few occasions, but Spurs were coming out on top in those scenarios. So we began to see him attempt riskier and riskier passes into the pivots to try and break the press. The problem is the pivots were also under extreme pressure, with Kulusevski and Sarr pressing, as Spurs had shifted into a 4-1-2-3 pressing shape. And we saw on more than a couple of occasions Sanchez playing the ball into these zones, leading to a turnover that then allowed Spurs to immediately be on the attack and bear down on the Chelsea goal. But where this shape bore ultimate fruit was, of course, in the Chelsea left centre-back zone. And this was one of those things in football where being proactive with your tactics means you get the bounce of the ball in lucky situations. In this match, of course, that was Cucurella, who slipped not only once, but twice, when Johnson was applying pressure. The slips weren't a part of Big Ange's tactical master plan, but these were errors that were absolutely forced by that man-to-man pressure from the front three. But that same pressing shape that put Spurs 2 up is also what cost them the game, because they were taking a massive gamble. Bringing in Caicedo meant that Chelsea were 4 versus 3 up, meaning that if the Blues bypassed that first line of pressure, they now had the overload in the midfield. And Chelsea were ruthless with this. The man who bore the brunt of this tactical issue was Yves Bissouma. The Malian often found himself 2 versus 1 down against Fernandes and Palmer in this region. And he had options. He could, A, stay central and half-mark 2 men, but in reality never be close enough to either man to apply real pressure. We did see this at times, and it was ineffective, so more often than not we saw option B, pick a man so that at least one of them was under pressure, and Bissouma often opted for the star man Cole Palmer, as he tried to get as close to the Englishman as he could. But Palmer, especially in the first half, made life even tougher, because rather than stay central, he often drifted into this zone. So if Bissouma didn't come across, Palmer was not only free, but he immediately had a 2 versus 1 as well against Udogie. But Bissouma did come across more often than not, meaning that Enzo Fernandez consistently got the space here. And Fernandez got onto the ball a lot, and when he did, he caused issues, as initially we saw the centre-back pushing up to try and close him down. But Nicholas Jackson was the key here, because he will make runs in behind for as long as he's on the pitch, so this was extremely risky. But it was about so much more than just giving Fernandes the ball in isolation. It was about dominating the entire left flank. So we did see Fernandes receive and run at the defense when he got the ball in this zone to create danger higher up. And the key is Sancho was always there right outside him, so he could easily receive and play Sancho into excellent crossing positions down the left. Or alternatively, he would be making the dart into the box through the half space himself to get on the ball. Jadon Sancho was vital in this match, and Chelsea were able to find him consistently quite easily, because Johnson pressing Cucurella meant that that he was quite narrow and there was a lot of space here. So Sancho was able to drop deep to receive with Porro being dragged high up the pitch. So now, space in the left back zone grew, meaning that if a centre back was considering pressing Fernandes, now Jackson would have even more room to run in behind and potentially receive. And here's the perfect example of that. Bissouma is 2 versus 1 down again, so this time Dragushin pushes up to apply the pressure. Cucurella receives and Sancho dropping grows the space. So now Jackson is in behind Dragushin and Porro. Fernandes on the overlap then gets onto the ball and creates a massive opportunity for Cole Palmer. But there were other alternatives to that left-hand overload, as Fernandes could receive and drive at the defense. Or at the very least, they had an elite 1v1 dribbler on the ball with plenty of room to work with. The best example of this? Well, the goal to make it 2-1. Firstly, Kulusevski and Sarr were on their pivots as always, and Son, Solanke and Johnson were pressing their centre-backs as always. Fernandes as the free man initially receives to relieve the pressure. And because of that, Caicedo is now in space. And just as importantly, we see Bissouma's tendency to commit to Palmer wide, meaning there is no protection behind Sarr and Kulusevski now. Cucurella eventually receives and we have Fernandes in space and Sancho ready for the 1v1. It's Fernandes this time who drags the centre-back away, giving Sancho the space to get Chelsea back in the game. Risk and reward. And in fact, this shape by Chelsea was so successful that even when Lavia came off, we saw Maresca's tactical agility as he instantly shuffled his personnel but kept the same shape. Gusto came on, allowing Caicedo to move to his natural position. So now when Chelsea had the ball, it was Gusto who tucked in to make a back 3 rather than Cucurella. Cucurella instead pushed well ahead of Fernandes to the left-sided attacking midfielder role. And with Sancho and Neto stretching the Spurs defense, he would consistently be making those runs through the half space. But there was a huge disadvantage to having Cucurella be the man doing this, which was on the transition, they often had no cover in the left-back zone, so Spurs looked threatening on the break in the second half. This match was the perfect example of how every tactical plan has advantages and disadvantages. Tactically speaking, Maresca earns a 7, while Postecoglou earns a 5, but drop your thoughts down below. Great news! I've just launched my newsletter, The Tactical Digest, to give you an even deeper look into the tactical side of the game and so much more. It's completely free through my link down below, so check it out.